Welcome to We Are Libertarians for this week. I am Chris Spangle. With me is, well, Greg's not here. I'm starting to worry that he's finally gotten alcohol poisoning or something. I don't know. But we decided we'd go ahead and get started without him. And with me is Nick. Nick, you want to give your last name?
Nick Taylor.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if you wanted to. You're a mysterious figure, and you also are Creighton's roommate.
I am.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started without Greg because I've got a lot of questions for you. How many pictures of Rand Paul are around the house?
Only about 30, somewhere around the 30 range.
30 range? Okay. Yeah. Do you hear random chants of USA? USA at night?
Sometimes come from me too, I guess.
Would you say Creighton loves the American flag or Rand Paul more?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt though and go with Rand Paul.
Okay, all right. And final question, do you even lift, bro?
I do, indeed.
What is it like to live with Creighton Harrington?
It's fun. I mean, we've known each other forever. I mean, we hardly ever see each other, honestly. We're both pretty busy.
Right.
Work and school, and he's trying to be a complete computer geek and get that.
Is he? Because see, we don't see him much either anymore. More now that he's back. Obviously, he's been able to come on a couple times, but he's got school, and so he can't make every episode. But we don't see him much either. What is Creighton up to?
Well, he's just going to school, trying to get his degree in computer science. Mm-hmm. I know he's doing a lot with programming and stuff like that. And he's working down at one of those breweries in Plainfield. I want to say.
Yeah. 3 Pints, maybe?
Yeah, 3 Pints.
All right, so if you're in Plainfield, head on down to 3 Pints Brewery. Now this is a national show at this point, so that's pretty obscure.
Yeah.
So what's your background? From whence did you come? If that using the Queen's English.
Oh well, I grew up here in Indianapolis. Went to high school with Creighton. Mm-hmm. I tried a semester at Indiana State University before I decided to go the Air Force route. I was going to school to be a commercial pilot and kind of research more, learned about air traffic control, joined the Air Force to be a controller, and I got that done. I did 5 years, and I got out a year early. I applied for early separation. And
was it them or was it you?
Maybe a little bit of both. It was a little bit of both, I guess. I was definitely ready to get out, and I think they were probably ready to get rid of me. Mm-hmm.
They heard you listen to this podcast, and it just was too much.
They couldn't deal with it.
They were sick of your crap.
So I got out, and now I've got a tentative offer with. Unfortunately, for the time being, another federal agency, the FAA. So,
Maya, if she were here, would ask you, how do you deal with that? How do you like being a teat-suckling parasite on the people of this podcast?
I guess, it's hard to justify working for the federal government as a libertarian sometimes, but the way I look at it in the end is someone has to make sure the airplanes don't crash into each other.
Right.
And I like being one of those people. I love the job, so
right.
I'm going to keep doing it until they privatize the industry, hopefully.
Hopefully Rand Paul can get that done, right?
Yeah, that would be nice.
So how did you become a libertarian? Were you always a libertarian, or was there like an aha moment for you?
It was kind of a gradual thing. I remember back in the 2008 election. It was funny because I was, me now would have hated high school me.
Right.
High school me was all about, GOP, blah blah blah, John McCain, and currently I was in my senior year of high school in 2008, and I had gone to a John McCain speech. And there are all these people outside this John McCain speech. It was on the Circle in Indianapolis. It was,
right. I remember that. Yeah.
And there were a bunch of people outside the speech, and they were just chanting and yelling and talking about this guy, Ron Paul. And, I thought they were crazy.
Right.
I was looking at them like, gosh, don't they know, like, this guy doesn't stand a chance. It's over. We're in Indiana in the primaries. Like, John McCain's our man.
Right.
And that was the first mention of his name that I really heard, and I just kind of went home, and the internet did the rest.
Yeah, it's funny. It is, and I guess Creighton kind of talked about this on the podcast where he made the case for Rand Paul. Ron Paul and I had a funny relationship, and I guess we still do. But ultimately, he became the guy that made me a libertarian. I have a piece of audio that I've not listened to and posted yet on the Chris Spangle Show feed. Check out wearelibertarians.com for that, where I think I'm essentially making fun of Ron Paul and calling him crazy, and this was probably 2007. And I was on WXNT, a talk radio show. But Ron, in those two runs, really created so many libertarians. Almost all of the libertarians that I'm around that are my age are libertarians because of Ron Paul.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
All he had to do was put the name out there,
Yeah, we've said it a lot the last few episodes, but I think people who are... I was always inclined to be a libertarian. I was a Republican as well. Worked for George Bush in 2004, president of the College Republicans in 2004. In 2003, I held a Support the Troops rally on the Circle with Greg Garrison and... Steve Booyer and Dan Burton and some other just crazy conservative, hardcore Republican types. And the whole notion of a Support the Troops rally is just such a good little Nazi, you know what I mean? And we're kicking off the anti-war protesters. And I have a DVD of that. I should put that up on Facebook, but I'm almost so embarrassed by it because it's so jingoistic. It's so...
It sounds like it's got great intentions, support the troops.
Well, yeah. It's not like I don't support the troops. Do
you not support the troops, Chris Spangle?
Since you're here, yes, I do. No, I definitely do.
No, there's a difference between supporting war and supporting...
Right, and the whole point of what I was doing was supporting the war.
Yeah.
But you just can't have a pro-war rally, We called it the pro-war rally, but you can't say that, So you wrap it in supporting the troops because that's what you can get away with, and who's going to sit here and go, well, I don't support the troops.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so it becomes incredibly difficult to say that you don't support the troops because... I think there are very few people. If less people signed up for the military, then we'd have less of a military. Of course. Yeah. But at some point, the government would just find a way to start conscripting people and using the draft. Mm-hmm. It's the policies and the politicians that are truly the problem. It's people who, I guess, don't think enough about where they're at in life when they take these sorts of jobs. So obviously you're a fairly, let's say, patriotic person who, you're serving your country, all this good stuff. And you became a libertarian while you're in the service. So how does that, does your core mission and your core beliefs of why you're there, does that sort of erode over the course of your time there?
While I was there, it really did eat at me. There were a couple times where, I was really questioning myself and, what I was doing exactly in the military. I actually never deployed or anything like that, so I didn't face any of the real moral dilemmas that some people have to face.
Let's be honest, you're in the Air Force.
Yeah. I was working up in a nice, comfy tower,
right,
watching airplanes fly around all day, but... there were some times for a short while I had orders to South Korea that they wound up getting canceled, And that was kind of, I was like, I really, as a libertarian, I don't feel like we should be there. But then again, I'm like, it'd be awesome to go to South Korea and hang out for a year.
Right. It's a vacation for you.
Yeah.
Again, you're in the Air Force.
Yeah.
I'm going to get hate mail for that. My grandfather was a Marine, so like we grew up like with the you're in the Air Force? You're barely in the military.
See, I just didn't have any desire to be all the way in the military then, I guess.
Right.
I was having enough problems being in the Air Force.
Yeah, I think, and maybe it would be different if you're on the front lines but you know, so often I see interviews with soldiers and read interviews, and it almost has become, because we're in a perpetual war and it's never ending, it becomes more about the brotherhood and protecting the guys that you're serving with and less about the mission.
Yeah, it's definitely way more about that. For most of the people that are actually in, you kind of forget about what the overall mission is and what you're doing there. And I could imagine for the people that are actually over there and in deep in Afghanistan and places like that, they're just trying to stay alive,
right?
At some point, yeah,
right. Yeah, I mean, so obviously your view of the wars and the use of war changes. I mean, talk a little bit about where you started at when it came to. I mean, obviously, if John McCain's your man, you're hardcore. I mean, for myself, obviously, I mean, I just remember writing, and I read some of the writings, and I remember arguing with this professor that I had. She was Susan Erickson. She's a poli-sci professor at IUPUI. She's not there anymore. I don't know where she went, but. It was 2003, in the middle of the Iraq debates, and I was just spouting off every Rush Limbaugh argument, and, our leaders, like our Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, they know what they're doing. And she just, like, started dying laughing. She's like, they know what they're doing. These are the people who were at the center of conducting the war in Vietnam. Do you think the war in Vietnam was a worthwhile and well-conducted war? And I was like, well, yeah. She's like, oh, son, you know nothing. And she's so right. I mean, and the more you learn about just the people kind of stay the same. They get themselves in politics and in these policy positions and stick around forever, and continue to make bad decisions over and over again that affect the lives of innocent people. I guess at this point we ought to say that at We're Libertarians, at least myself, I'm pretty anti-war. I'm damn near a pacifist. We're told so often that war is the great builder, the great. What war really is the great destroyer.
Yeah,
it destroys lives. It destroys wealth. For everything, it just disrupts the entire order. It disrupts markets. It allows intervention in all kinds of markets, labor, financial, foreign markets. And it is a way for the elite and for the ruling class, i.e. those at the top of the government, to start to gain more power over the rest of us in the name of war. Libertarians have a tough sell, because you have something like, you have the situation with ISIS, for instance, and you see the beheading of the Christians and the videos and the persecution of Christians that is today Obama and other world leaders are marking the 100th the door's open just in case Greg gets here. It's all right. But Obama and the others are marking the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide today. And 1.5 million people were slaughtered in the middle of World War I. And the Turks went in and slaughtered the Armenian people and destroyed an entire culture. Mm-hmm. And it's still a debate whether or not Obama calls that a genocide today. I mean, the world, you can totally upset relations with Turkey by saying that it was a genocide because of something the Ottoman Empire did 100 years ago, because they're so sensitive about it. Well, they should be. They murdered 1.5 million people. And ISIS in many ways is starting to repeat that with Christians, the Coptic Christians in Egypt, Christians in Libya, in Iraq, and Syria. I think that I heard some stat like there was like 1 million, 1.5 million Christians in Iraq, and now it's less than 250,000. Not that they've all been killed; it's just they've fled to places like Jordan, and other parts of Syria, other parts of Iraq. So I think for libertarians, it's still tough, non-interventionist to say, how do you fight ISIS? I mean, do you have a concrete? I imagine first, are you a non-interventionist? I mean, are you?
I would say yes, I am a non-interventionist. ISIS definitely challenges that libertarian side of me. I see what they're doing over there, and I just want nothing more than for them to get absolutely crushed.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm saying, there's a lot of people over there that are able to do that. They're able to get that job done, and if anyone should do it first, it should be them, in my opinion. It shouldn't be us. We shouldn't be the first ones to rush in. And
I saw there was an interview with a guy. I don't know his name. I don't know. I can find it, dig it up, and post it on the Facebook page. But, he was a former Special Forces guy and an evangelical Christian, and he and a bunch of other Special Forces guys have voluntarily they've organized a group. They're raising money through GoFundMe. They are collecting supplies and using their training through the military to voluntarily go to Iraq and train the Kurds, and some of these other fighters who are fighting ISIS, but need training, and the Obama administration will not provide training. And, as much as if we were just talking about this, as much as Glenn Beck is kind of moving down the road, there's still these points where you go, he's arguing, they're not doing enough to aid these guys. Yeah. I look at it and go, no, this is the point where voluntarism comes in. Because if you really believe that ISIS is a threat to your survival, then you go fight ISIS. What do you need? I'm not going to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it.
And people don't even understand that that's an option.
Right.
But people do go over there and do that.
Because we've created a culture in our society where we are waiting for the government to give us permission to do things.
Well, and a lot of people that call for people to go to war, they've never been in the military. A lot of them have never been in the military and want nothing to do with it.
Right.
They would be the last person that if it came down to it, that would actually go over there and take action.
Right. So to me, you have a voluntary system again where, I was at lunch today. It's so funny to go back to 2003. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm sitting at lunch with coworkers today. And let me tell you, I'm a blast at lunch. We're talking about ISIS and how to deal with ISIS, and I'm talking about non-interventionism. And everybody else is like, can we get back to talking about basketball? But so we were... I just said, listen, we have these imaginary lines drawn, and we call that our country, and then we have imaginary lines drawn by the Western world in these Eastern countries, and then we go in and we fight people in these other imaginary boundaries. It just doesn't make sense. The reason that ISIS and Al-Qaeda exist is because of our intervention in their... look at Iran. Iran is such a great example of that. Iran pops up. Iran is the Persian Empire, and for centuries a dominant force, and they were becoming a more dominant force after World War II. And then we decided that we put in the Shah of Iran and propped them up and exploited them for their oil and their resources. And the people of Iran got pissed and overthrew the Shah of Iran and put in the Ayatollah. And now we're here.
And isn't that like isn't that the first time in like modern civilization that someone was overthrown, a democratic society was democratically overthrown to be replaced by a more...
I don't know that.
I think I remember reading something like that somewhere.
We are libertarians, where we think we give you facts. So
Google it.
Google it. Yeah, this is one of the major CIA operation, I think, 1958. Yeah. So we sow our own seeds, and so if we have a non-interventionist foreign policy, we're not going to have ISIS to fight. The best way to deal with Iran is not to bomb their nuclear facilities. The best way to deal with Iran is to trade with them and use our economic engine to help their economic engine rise their middle class, and a middle class brings stability.
And you know what drives me nuts right now is Iran is a rational actor. Mm-hmm. They are. And we are trying so hard to turn them into an irrational actor.
Totally.
We're trying so hard to make them that so that we can go over there and bomb them,
Well, but they are terrorist funders.
Yeah. I mean, they do this stuff with, Hezbollah and all of that. But in the end, I think as far as what I mean by rational actor, for those of you that might not know what I'm talking about there, is they are acting in what appears to be their best interests.
What is self-interested for their nation, right?
Yes. So they're not irrational like North Korea. North Korea is not a rational actor. They don't really do what's in their best interest for their economy. They just kind of do whatever dear leader tells them to do.
Hey, no. Yeah, it comes down to holding on to power. Every political organization wants to hold on to power, but, as far as there's obviously political prisoners. There are many political prisoners. Mm-hmm. There was I think it's Washington Post editor or reporter who is being held in Iran.
Yeah.
But as far as we can tell, uncles aren't being fed to dogs like in North Korea.
No, nothing like that.
I'm trying to find a speech by the president of Iran, and it's really like you hear the speech, and so often you think, well, you just hear propaganda, essentially. You hear that they are, again, irrational actors, like you said, but then when you hear the way that the Iranian people are, what is being said to the Iranian people by their leaders, it's interesting to hear them try and say, listen, we want peace, we're not trying to go to war. It's not, the great Satan in the West. It's listen, we're dealing, the nut job Republicans are, so it's kind of interesting. Here it is. Okay. From Iran's President Rouhani. Essentially, we are negotiating with the P5+1, not U.S. lawmakers. President Hassan Rouhani addressed a large gathering in the Gilan province on April 15th. Rouhani reassured Iranians that the negotiating team will safeguard Iran's nuclear rights and called for unanimity in spirit of national interests. Rouhani stated, the great powers and even America came to the conclusion that the strong Iranian regime cannot be overthrown. The world acknowledged, first rule of when I have my regime, I'm never going to call it a regime in public. You don't. That's bad form, Rouhani. The world acknowledged the fact that the development and the path of this nation to the peaks of science and industry will be permanent. Our negotiations with the world powers showed that in this country there are diverse opinions and there may be differing views, but where there is a crucial issue of national interest and an agreement is vital to the nation, we are all united and cohesive. In the year, and listen to this hate-mongering from President Rouhani of Iran, in the year designated as the year of harmony and unanimity, the supreme leader and all people from all walks of life called for a dignified deal and constructive interaction with the world. The Iranian people believe that this is the era of moderation because the days of extremism are numbered and are all unanimous in having constructive interaction with the world. Today, we have demonstrated our solidarity with this country, in this country. I would like to declare to the other side, meaning the P5+1, that Iran seeks a dignified deal. Dignity. We have taken the necessary steps, and we will continue to moving forward, but you must respect the rights of the Iranian people. I am announcing here that what the American Senate says, or what the House of Representatives wants, and what the American radicals are after, and what their mercenaries, U.S. allies, in the region are saying, Saudi Arabia, is not relevant to our nation and government. Our path in the nuclear talks will be the path of moderation, interaction, dialogue, and logic. We want interaction in return for interaction. We want goodwill in return for goodwill. The other side in negotiations is not the American Senate or the House of Representatives. It is a collection of states called the P5+1. Rouhani on sanctions. Sanctions will be the main topic in next week's talk, meaning the inhumane cruelty they inflicted on the great Iranian nation. The world, the P5+1, I don't think Greg knew he was supposed to be here at 4:30. That was him. Let me mute this. The world, the P5+1, the American government, the President, Barack Obama, and Senate should know that there will be no deal if the sanctions are not removed. At the end of negotiations and the timing of a signing of a final deal should be the time of declaring an end to and the lifting of cruel sanctions in the great Iranian nation. You think that the Iranian nation only calls for lifting of economic sanctions, but the fact is that your companies are more eager for this. You know all European and American companies are waiting for the signing of a final deal on the Rouhani on economy. We, the government, promise you this year will be the year of economic prosperity. Rouhani on regional security. Iran helped every country in the region that was facing terrorism. We did not allow the terrorists to be successful. Now, we don't know who the terrorists are in his definition. Probably ISIS is who I suspect he's talking about, but it could be Israel. We did not allow the terrorists to be successful in the region. We announced to the regional countries the path to security and stability is through interaction and respect for people. Bombing the oppressed will not get you anywhere. Why are you, Saudi Arabia, bombing the oppressed Yemeni people, destroying the infrastructure of a weak country, and killing women and children by the warplane supplied by America? Are you seeking to dominate the region? If you, Saudi Arabia, want regional stability, then listen good for the Iranian nation's call. It is to your advantage. Iran's objective is not to dominate the region. Do not make a mistake. I probably don't believe him there. There is no domination of Shias over Sunnis. Our goal is for the nations of the region to be proud. There is no difference between Shias, Sunnis, Turks, Arabs, and Persians.
I may not believe him all the way there.
Sure.
But I think that him saying that does kind of show what I'm talking about with the rational actor, because an irrational actor probably doesn't even bother saying that. They probably say,
sure,
we're out for domination. We're going to take over the Middle East.
Sure. And so I'm just telling Greg that we started a long time ago. 2-6 for my cousin. My cousin was supposed to be here too, but some family issues came up.
Okay.
My cousin's actually the one who kind of got me into libertarianism, so I was looking forward to having him.
Oh, really?
Some other time. So yeah, I thought, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you can't really. He's a politician talking to people.
Yeah.
So he's probably lying through his teeth.
No doubt.
There's no doubt about that. But I do think that it's an interesting perspective. You don't often hear from the Iranian president. You hear what is filtered through, which is usually, dealing with bombs first, U.S.-led coalition we have sanctions against Iran, and they want nuclear weapons, and John Kerry is in talks with them, so they must be bad. Yeah. There must be something wrong with them.
Yeah. Really, when you look at the way their government acts, it's not so much as far as foreign policy, but as far as internal policy. How they enforce laws inside of their own country. I think they're a lot more sane than Saudi Arabia is. Saudi Arabia has some pretty radical things that they do on a regular basis.
Right.
So I don't know how. I would have to look up the history of it at all. I don't know how we wound up choosing Saudi Arabia as our ally there, but
oil.
Yeah,
and when Greg gets here, hopefully he can kind of fill us in a little bit on that, and we'll dive a little more deeply into Iran and all these issues in the future. Yeah, because Iran has nearly as much oil as Saudi Arabia does. They're both fighting ISIS, but as we've said on the previous podcast, especially Greg, that Iran makes much more of a strategic partner than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
They're a much more Western culture. They're a much more Westernized people that have more in common with our society than Saudi Arabians do.
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia is, and this is what's so interesting about all the Clinton cash stuff. Peter Schweitzer's book is coming out on Clinton's cash and her taking money from Saudi Arabians. We need to elect a woman president. It's time to have a woman president, but that woman president takes money through her foundation from governments that kill women for just exercising their basic human rights.
Has anyone in recent history started their campaign off as bad as Hillary has?
I don't know.
Everything to me seems like it's just faux pas after
Fake,
faux pas.
phony.
Yeah, it's been so bad.
Hey, by the way, before we move into Hillary, go to irantracker.org. That is a website that you can find kind of full coverage. It is from the American Enterprise Institute, and they're really kind of, for a conservative think tank, they are giving a fairly well-rounded, they're not afraid to give you first sources. But again, conservative think tank, so put on your glasses there. Cool. So,
I didn't mean to move into Hillary like full swing there.
You already run the podcast. You've been here 45 minutes and it's broken forever. No. So you don't think Hillary has done well, do you?
No, not at all. I think her announcement is so disconnected to me. Completely disconnected from the American public, and you have scandal after scandal after scandal. Now they're looking at all this money that's been funneling through her, or is it a nonprofit that she's got?
Yeah, it's like a foundation.
Yeah. They're looking at all this money that's been funneling through here, and it just, I don't think, I think she's still probably obviously a strong first front runner for the Democrats, but I don't think she's invincible like people thought she was.
I don't either. I think every Republican that announces sort of dents her a little bit more. I think on the Democratic side, I would be surprised if she didn't pull it out. I remember when I went through my independent streak, it being a little impressed with Jim Webb. Webb I think he was in the military, but he's from Virginia, I think. He could very well be a Republican. I think he's pro-gun. He's like this military historian. He's a pretty down-to-earth. I think he might play well, but it's so late for any Democrat to get in because Hillary has already raised so much money. In New Hampshire, for instance, when it comes to presidential staff in New Hampshire, it is the first is Hillary with 19 staffers. Mm-hmm. Second is 3, and it's with 3 staffers. It is Donald Trump.
Wow, Donald Trump.
Doesn't that make you feel good?
Oh yeah.
So basically, Hillary, I think, is beatable, and I have not followed. Obviously, I've not really followed presidential politics at all because it's been too soon over the last year. But I heard an interview with Scott Walker this past week. I heard an interview with obviously Rand Paul. Ted Cruz obviously is very adept at arguing and debating and talking. I saw Meet the Press with John Kasich, and I've found his resume, obviously a dirty statist, but somebody who's been in Congress for many years, has been on television, is very polished when it comes to speaking, and has a track record as governor. He's somebody that I think could match Hillary with her quote-unquote experience. Mm-hmm. What experience does Hillary really have? But yeah, I just think she is sort of out of touch with what... I mean, when you see Hillary carrying her own bags and flying coach, do you buy it?
No, not at all. If you're being honest with the American public, you take your private jet and you go wherever you need to go. If you're flying coach and you're Hillary Clinton, it's just kind of silly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a great article that I posted on the Facebook page where you deserve, America, Hillary's soulless, vapid campaign where there is no passion. But because we don't want substance in our society anymore, in our culture. We want what is tabloid, essentially. Yeah. And Hillary brings tabloid. And so you get somebody who, well, I want a woman president. I want... she's a Democrat, and she lost to Obama, so I feel like it's her turn.
The other day I saw someone post something like, if all of you, all you Hillary haters out there, you're all just misinformed by the media and blah, 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 and you just need to actually do your own research and find out why Hillary would actually be good. And I was like, what research are you doing that makes you think Hillary would be good at this point? Unless you just think that, Bill Clinton was a good president and you think that Bill Clinton is going to be.
All right. Well, we are now going to... Greg is going to magically appear here in a moment, as will Joe Ruiz and Julie Borowski. So,
good stuff.
When I am done speaking this sentence... you will be hearing us interview Julie Borowski through the magic of radio.
Your new website, julieborowski.com, launches in, 8 days, 7 days? What is it now?
May 1st, whenever that is.
May 1st, okay. So I think when I posted the link to your new website on the We Are Libertarians Facebook page last week, one of the things that seemed to be common, because you know how pleasant some people can be in the comments section, are, people question the title Liberty Uncensored. And I think you even commented one of the commenters, you said, you don't know me, because they said, it's just too goody two shoes, and whatever. What do you say to those people, and why did you choose Liberty Uncensored to be kind of the theme of your new website? I
actually didn't create that. One of the people who are working on my website just put it there, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll go with it. I know I posted it, and some people were making fun of me, saying, oh, you're uncensored. Why are you going to use the F word now, Julie? I'm like, no. My mom watches everything I do. No, but basically what they mean by uncensored is that I'm not going to be working for anyone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be on my own, doing freelance work, basically saying what I want to say when I want to say it. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it.
Now, this is Chris Spangle. I've worked for the Libertarian Party of Indiana. I've worked for the Advocates for Self-Government. Both great organizations. I loved it. But I had a board in both situations. And you don't get to say what you want to say. You kind of have to tiptoe around the line, and it is an uncomfortable space. So how much different do you think how much further do you think you'll be able to go, or what are some things that you've not been able to talk about that you just can't wait to start talking about?
Well, the biggest thing for me is that I could only make YouTube videos on the weekend. It was like a spare time because I had a day job. So the biggest change for me is I'm going to be able to create more content, basically saying what I want to say. If you're working for somebody, you have to say what they want to say. And I agree with everything I said, but, I want to do things on my own. I have, if you've watched my videos before, I kind of have a creative, if you want to call it, twist to my stuff that I do. And I couldn't really do that when I was working in a professional environment. So that's kind of what they mean by uncensored, that I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, as opposed to, I have to ask permission, can I go this far and stuff. So that's what they mean by that.
We had an experience back last year sometime. Greg's one of the co-hosts of the show, we went out to a Young Americans for Liberty conference, and we recorded a live podcast from the YAL conference, but one of our other co-hosts was at the time working for Young Americans for Liberty. And, we are a little goofy on this show sometimes, and also on our Facebook page, as you've probably seen in the past.
We might have intimated that he was passed out. We might have said that he was drunk.
We ended up having to take down the episode for the duration of the time that our co-host was employed with Young Americans for Liberty, because we didn't want to step on any toes with our goofiness. And so, yes, we've experienced that kind of thing as well. So do you feel like, is it going to be the same Julie Borowski that everybody has kind of become familiar with, or do you feel like there's any evolution that's taking place with you being able to put out more content? Is there another side, or is it just, more?
It's mostly just more of me. Basically, who do you see in my YouTube videos? That's just me kind of being stupid or whatever. So I get to do that as opposed to, what I was saying that, sometimes you have to ask permission to do stuff, and I don't want to ask permission. I just want to do what I want to do. I don't know. I think maybe I'll take things further because I don't have that in the back of my head, like, I have a boss. I shouldn't be doing this. Now I don't have a boss. I'm my own boss.
Yeah, so a little bit of, I don't know if you want to get into this, so feel free to tell me to get lost, but are you, so you're leaving FreedomWorks, and is there going to be a membership portion to this, or how are you going to make a living, I guess, is the way to put it? Like, how are people going to be able to contribute to you and support you in what you're doing?
Yeah, so I don't really like the whole subscriber thing because I want my content to be free for everyone. The biggest thing I'm going to be doing is, there's going to be ads on my website. I know some people don't like ads, but I think it's better than requiring everyone to subscribe and pay for my website. So, I have to eat, I have to pay rent. So there's going to be things like ask for donations, which I know I'm uncomfortable with myself, but I've been working at nonprofits who get donations, so I should probably do some of that too. It's going to be uncomfortable, but if people like my work and they want to support me, that would be awesome. Some other stuff I'm going to be doing, more speaking engagements. I know I haven't had a lot of opportunity to do that before. I've done some, but more now that I'm on my own, I can do more. Things like that. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'm just like, we'll see how this is going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we identify. We're sort of at that point with what we're doing here, and it's like, well, hey, give us money.
So, I was going to say something similar. So, if while you're on this journey, if you can share any pointers with us, we would appreciate that because we're kind of on a similar path, I think.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of breeze through some user questions here because on Facebook we told people you were going to be on. Some of them had questions that were serious. Some of them had questions that were not so serious. And we're going to throw a few of them, probably from both sides, your way. But one of them wanted to know your stance on smoking. This says, does someone's freedom to smoke trump my freedom to breathe smoke-free air? What do you think about that?
What kind of smoke? Cigarettes or marijuana? Basically, I actually don't like smoking. I don't like to be around smoking. When someone's smoking, I don't like it. But I think it's really just a property rights discussion. I believe restaurants, as opposed to the state, should decide whether to allow smoking or not. I know myself, I wouldn't go into a smoky restaurant or bar. It'd just be uncomfortable for me. But, that's the complete right to do that. Same as in your house. If you don't want to let smokers into your house, then you should have that right. I think that's a better way to solve it.
Lindsay asks, do you attribute the gap in the number of women versus men interested in politics and philosophy in general, not just in the libertarian movement, to inherent biological differences or to our culture?
Oh, gosh. I always hate these questions, to be honest, because
I apologize. I'm sorry.
I don't know. It's always just like, what do women think? What do men think? I don't know. Like, I'm an individual. Like, I don't speak for all women on things. I made a video, actually it's been a couple years ago, about why a lot of women are not libertarians, and it kind of got me into trouble. I basically said that libertarianism is kind of nerdy. I think it's changing a little bit, becoming more mainstream, but it's still pretty nerdy, let's be honest here, and that men are more attractive to those types of things, things on the margin. If you go to, comic book conventions, anime conventions, video gaming, like there's a lot of men there. There's more men than women, definitely. So that was kind of what I thought. I think as libertarianism becomes more mainstream, it's going to attract more people, more women, more minorities, just people coming in to the libertarian fold. Apparently people think that's controversial, so I don't know if it's biological or society. I just think it's just kind of more of a mainstream versus a marginal discussion.
This is about right to work. Do you believe, Joshua asks, do you believe right to work violates private contract rights?
This is a topic that I don't really have a strong opinion on. Because it's framed in a weird way. Should people have the right to work? It always kind of sounds more of a liberal thing, but I know it's about unions, whether people should be free to join unions or not. My instinct is to say that people should be free, but then I'm like, well, the employer, shouldn't it be their option to have a closed shop or open shop or whatever? I don't really have a strong opinion on that. I don't really have a strong opinion on unions, actually. I've never worked for a union. I've never been involved there, so I don't really know about that one.
All right. Hey, let's do a speed round, okay? I'm going to name a person's name, and you're going to give me the first thing that comes to your head, not too in-depth. Not too in-depth. Just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. So let's start with Ted Cruz.
I can't do just one word. I think Ted Cruz is good on some issues. I think he has a problem with foreign policy. He's too hawkish for me, but he's good on some issues. I don't want to throw him completely under the bus.
Chris, do you want to throw a name out?
Yeah, Mike Pence.
Mike Pence?
Mm-hmm.
I know he was involved in writing the Patriot Act, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that much about him, really. He's probably good on economic issues, but probably not so good on NSA spying issues.
Not so good on same-sex rights either. But how about Marco Rubio?
Same thing with Ted Cruz. I think he has a problem on foreign policy. He's probably even more hawkish than Ted Cruz is. So I think that's going to hurt him with libertarians, obviously. On Obamacare, I don't know how he is on civil liberties. Probably okay. I don't know.
Hillary Clinton.
The best. Hillary Clinton, she's worse than probably any of the Republicans, because she's very hawkish on foreign policy. She's pro-NSA spying. She has a terrible record all around, and I don't know why anyone would support her except for her because she's a woman.
Will the rollout of JulieBorowski.com be a little bit more smooth than the rollout of Hillary's presidential campaign for 2016?
I hope so.
I think anything can be more smooth.
What
than
about
that.
Rand Paul?
Rand Paul, I actually just wrote a post about this for my website, but you can't see it yet. I think Rand Paul is good on a lot of issues, but I think he's trying to play both sides of non-interventionist and the neocon side, and it's kind of like, okay, you need to kind of pick a side here, because if you're trying to please everyone, you're going to end up pleasing no one, and I know a lot of libertarians have just kind of left Rand Paul, so I think he really needs to pick a side there.
I would say that's kind of always been my complaint with him. It's you don't really, I guess he's shaky to me. It's kind of, there's a wish-washiness that is the total opposite of Ron Paul, where it's like, here's what I believe, and F you if you don't believe it too. I don't care what you think.
Well, I think it'll look like that to the close observer, because we watch everything he does, whereas most people, the hawkish people see the hawkish things, and
right.
The libertarians will see everything. I guess.
What about Gary Johnson?
Gary, I like Gary Johnson. He's very obsessed with weed, but that's okay. That's what he wants to do. I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012. If he wants to run as a libertarian again, I think that's great. I don't know what the likelihood of a Libertarian Party candidate winning president, but I think he brings something new to the table. So Gary.
You compare Gary Johnson to Rand Paul. I mean, you talked about likelihood, and I think we all kind of know where that sits. But if you just were to compare them on the issues, based on what you know, who's the stronger candidate, in your opinion?
Well, the thing is, Gary Johnson is more libertarian than Rand Paul, because I think Gary Johnson can be more open about being a libertarian and being a proud libertarian and talk about libertarian issues, because, once again, if he's running as a libertarian, the likelihood of him winning is, let's be honest here, it's not very good, as opposed to Rand Paul, who's running in the GOP primary. So some people say that Rand Paul is a pure libertarian. He's just kind of hiding it. I don't know personally. I don't know him that well. But I think he can't be as open about his libertarian views because he's running the GOP primary, so he's going to be more careful about what he says and what he does. So I don't think you can really compare them on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It'll be interesting to see because he sounds like the way you're saying it, it's kind of like our situations with YAL or the Advocates for Self-Government or Freedom Works or any of those organizations we've been affiliated with. It'll be interesting to see if when or if he gets elected, I guess I should say, if we end up seeing some liberty uncensored.
Yeah.
Very, very good. All right.
That was a nice little plug, right? Last minute.
Thank you. Julie, why don't you tell so right now, people can't see the website if they're listening to it, obviously, before launch date. But they can go and see your content where?
So right now, you can go to my YouTube page and see it. If you don't have the link, you can go to my Facebook page. It's all right there. Facebook, Julie Borowski. Twitter, Julie Borowski. But you can go to my website, actually, julieborowski.com. There's a kind of a welcome page, and you can sign up for the email list. So as soon as the site launches, you will be notified.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for joining us here on We Are Libertarians. We appreciate it, and we ask everyone listening to go check out all of Julie's content. It's always a fun introduction that's easy. The stuff that I like about your stuff the most, Julie, is that it is fun, and it's not aggressive in any way. It's just sort of easily accessible, and you can share it with your friends and family, and they're not going to be, it's not somebody yelling at them that they don't read enough Rothbard. So I always want to thank you for that.
We're just all a big silly
so
yeah.
Thanks again. Thanks again for joining.
You guys are silly. I see what you post on Facebook.
Well, thank you for following us, first of all. And yes, we are a big bag of silly. That is for sure.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. All right. So thank you, Joe and Chris. That was me and Joe, or Joe and I, interviewing Julie Borowski.
I had it in my phone for 5:30.
Well, that's when we were interviewing Julie, and you even had thrown out the time of 4:30 on Thursday.
I had, yeah, and I just got so flummoxed, and then I changed it in my phone. I still, like yesterday, I was having a bad day, horrible headache from sinus infection, and was just not clear-headed at any point during the day. It was one of those days I was like, I should just go away because I am worthless at everything.
Right. Well, it went okay.
Yeah, except for, Joe probably offended her to the point she'll never appear again.
We edited it out, so people didn't actually hear what Joe said.
Oh, okay.
But there was a question on the Facebook where it was... It wasn't directly inappropriate.
It was ambiguous.
Right.
It depends on the mindset of the person being asked.
And so Joe thought it was an innocent question, and Julie and I did not.
No. She, in fact, thought it was an inappropriate question.
Right. And it is so funny because Joe's always telling you and I, Joe's like the stand-up guy of the group. Like,
yeah.
Joe's got 2 kids and a wife and is a decent human being. You and I, however...
Oh, we're total degenerates.
Right.
We are the worst of the worst among society.
Right. So you can check out wearedegenerates.com.
Yes.
That's the sequel to this website. But go look at the questions on the Facebook page for Julie. You can probably figure out which one it was that we didn't really have to cut it out. It just felt inappropriate. So.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, if it made you cringe,
yeah,
that is a great barometer for whether or not it's appropriate.
So we always want to treat our guests with respect.
Now, was Nick Taylor? Was he on that part?
No, well, he did mention one thing, violating the rule that he was not supposed to speak, but I didn't make that clear.
I guess.
I just did one of these where I sliced my own neck and said shh, shh.
And you still let him be on the second half.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, see, here's what's happening. This is Friday.
Yeah.
Yesterday was Thursday, right?
Right.
Okay. So Thursday we got together with Nick, and by we, I mean I.
You.
You did not show up.
And Joe didn't stick around for that portion?
No. So Nick and I recorded like 40 minutes, and then we did 15 minutes or so with Julie.
What did you guys speak about, you and Nick?
Non-interventionism.
Nice.
Why should I tell you? You can just go back and listen to it.
Oh, I will listen to it.
50 minutes
As
ago.
long as I'm not on the show, I'll listen. But if I'm on it, there's no way.
Right. Okay. Well, we are trying Periscope for this portion of We're Libertarians, so I get to look at myself while I am doing this.
Have you announced it on Twitter?
I don't know if that happened or not. I'm going to turn it around so people can see what you look like. I double tap here.
Close your eyes.
Right. Oh, there he is. Oh, that's enough of that. Okay. All right, back to me.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk. Right before Nick got here the other day, I saw this video pop up on my timeline titled "Police and DCF in Garden City, Kansas Deny Cannabis Activists Entry into Her Own Home." So it caught my eye, and I watched it, and it's stunning. I mean, it's nothing. If you have followed Radley Balco's work he's a Washington Post writer, formerly of Reason, formerly of HuffPo, formerly of I think The Agitator was his.
Yeah, where
blog.
is he now?
He's at Washington Post.
He's at Washington Post now.
And he's written a book. If you go back in our feed, there's actually a 2-hour presentation from when his book came out that you and I attended a speech of his at IU. And it's The Rise of the Warrior Cop. And it's police issues have popped up on this this podcast over the last, the entirety of the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
With when Maya was more involved, since is she still local chapter president of Cop Block in Indianapolis?
I don't think so. I think no, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, she used to be, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we've always for the longest time it wasn't that didn't get attention. So the militarization of the police got no attention at all, and then people saw Ferguson on CNN, and that was kind of a tipping point of where even average citizens went, "Oh my gosh,
right,
this is too much." And it went from where cops were seen as heroes and gods to now I guess you could say that it's shifted. That they're not, they're not hated by the general public, but they're not infallible like they used to be.
I was thinking that the other day as well, where you see in this issue and some of the other police-related issues, the media has shifted, and so where the media goes, public opinion will go. The media has shifted from criminals are all bad and the police are always good, and if you are a criminal, then you shouldn't have been doing this, and blah, blah, blah. That sort of old-school attitude that we've had in our society, best detailed by a documentary that everybody has to watch, The House I Live In.
I haven't seen that.
I've only recommended it on this podcast like every other week. What are you doing, Greg?
Well, I tend to be drawn towards your GMO documentaries that you like.
Thank you. Yes, huge. I have a chemtrail documentary coming out next week, and then we'll get to Building 7 the week after that.
Now that's your favorite. But
when I do a documentary, I only like to put a week's worth of research into it. Okay?
Absolutely.
That's the best way to make a documentary.
And then declare yourself an expert.
Well, I've already sort of done that, haven't I? So this woman comes home, and I didn't have any context to the story whatsoever. So let's start it that way, because I think that's how most people have been introduced to the story, is just by listening to the video or watching the video. You'll be listening. But we'll put this up on WeareLibertarians.com and on our Facebook page, and we'll put all the stuff that we're going to talk about, all the links, all the pages, and her GoFundMe page, because trust me, after you hear the whole story, you're going to want to donate to her. So let's start with the video, and she is arriving home, and we'll kind of stop this a little bit and add in commentary to the video.
I'm just getting home.
She's pulling up to her
And there
house.
are officers all over my porch. And an officer just went in my backyard. Can I ask what this is about?
Yes, you want to come on up here and talk to us?
What are you doing in my backyard? Do you have a warrant?
Ma'am, the reason why we're here is we got a call from Department of Children and Families that we need to speak with you about.
Okay.
Will you give us consent to search your home?
No. You do not have consent to search my home.
All right, so let's pause there.
Tell me what this is about, please.
So there's someone from in Indiana. It's called CPS. This is in Kansas. Someone from Child Family Services is what they call it there, and police officers. They asked to search her home, which is your first signal that they don't have a warrant at all, because otherwise they'd already be in the house. So they asked to be gained access to her house. She does not give consent. So therefore, they should just immediately all leave the property. They really don't have any right to be standing on her front porch.
No.
Although
I'm betting you anything, they're going to try to justify it, but they had, a reason or oh god, I wanted to say reasonable doubt. That's not correct, but
probable cause.
Probable cause.
Yeah. Well, no. If they had probable cause, they would have had a warrant. So anyways, let's keep going. So the mystery keeps unfolding here.
DCF, this is Juan from DCF. Here's a pamphlet explaining your rights. We got a report.
So the young DCS worker, and as we've said in 105, I think it was, most people who get out of social work don't want to go work for DCS. They don't want to work for the government arm of child services because it's an awful, hopeless place. So it's a young female handing her a pamphlet that explains her rights.
Is my son at school?
Yes.
Can you tell me what this is in regards to?
Well, we had
At this point, a female police officer starts talking.
a report that was turned into Children and Families about the well-being of your son, okay, and about drug use in the home.
The well-being of my son?
Yes.
Both of my children are fine.
Okay. Well, that's why we're here checking.
Okay.
Not. Well, that's why we're here checking.
We wanted to catch up.
Right, yeah.
We've never had a case with you before, and we're doing this as a community service project. We're going around and seeing how the children in the community are.
Well, we've already deemed you guilty, but we're just here. We're going to placate you now.
Yeah.
When we get a report, we have to investigate it and see if your child is safe.
That is the CPS officer just kind of explaining why they're there. She's clearly nervous.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing, is we're just following up on what we got to ensure that your child's safe to
But they never
remain
explain
here, and there's nothing.
exactly what the report was or anything like that, which is not uncommon in regards to CPS.
Thing that you guys need help with or anything like that.
They're just there to help.
with.
Yeah, we're here to see if you need help with anything.
No, there's nothing that we need help with. We've been making a garden in my backyard. Wow, there's another officer came out of my backyard. I don't know why that there are officers in my backyard without a warrant. Someone explain that to me.
Okay. We have a right to be where the public has a right to be.
The public is not allowed in my backyard.
Well, here's the thing. It's open field, okay?
It is
And
not. It's a
we
fenced
are
yard.
making sure that nobody is entering your residence.
What is your name?
My name's Officer Billings.
Billings?
Yes.
What is your name, officer?
Officer Winter.
Winter, and your name also?
Officer Martinez.
Martinez, you were both in my backyard without a warrant.
We weren't in your backyard.
I just saw you in my backyard.
That's your driveway.
Yeah.
It's on video. He was in her backyard.
Yeah.
So where did the other officer come from? He wasn't in my driveway before. He just came out from behind. Okay?
Okay.
This is on film.
Are you telling me you teleported?
Okay. Do you need anything more from me?
Well, I'm waiting on my sergeant at the moment. Since consent was denied for search of your residence for the safety of your child. So we're going to wait for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to leave my residence unless you have a warrant. You have no reason to be here.
Well, at this point in time, you're not free to go into your residence, okay?
Which is not true.
Because at this time, we can't guarantee the safety of your child. Okay?
Why?
He's still at school right now.
He's still at school, so we can't guarantee the safety of your child.
And that's commentary on the state of public schooling in
Right.
Kansas, not on her house.
Right.
But he'll be coming home soon. And we want to make sure that he comes home to a safe house.
So at what we're 4 minutes into this, you haven't explained why my house is unsafe. So now, Captain Clodhopper, Barney
God.
Fife, walks up.
Are you the sergeant?
I am. You must be the photographer.
Well, I'm the...
Oh, snark.
I rent the...
Yeah, you must be the photographer. So he's clearly gotten a text from one of the officers saying she's filming us, by the way, which, as we know, generally does not go well.
House here, yeah.
But is damn near necessary in this day and age,
Absolutely
which we'll talk about
necessary.
more about.
Okay. And you're videoing me?
I am absolutely videoing you.
Okay. You're not free to go in the house until we get a search warrant. And once we get the search warrant, you are free to leave at this point. But we're securing the house. We're going to get a search warrant.
How is this legal?
Well,
You can't let me in my own home without a search warrant.
Right.
No, not right.
We are going to secure it because we believe that there's evidence inside that house, specifically marijuana. All right. And once we get that, then we're completed.
Based on what?
Doesn't matter.
No, it does matter.
So, if you want to hang out here or you want to leave, I don't care at this point, but you cannot go in the house.
It is my home.
It doesn't matter. There's evidence in there that you could destroy. So, everything that was in the house is being secured at this point for a search warrant.
None of what he just said was true, by the way.
You're not allowed in my backyard.
That's true.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No.
It is not public property. You don't have a warrant.
Doesn't matter.
What is your name again?
Sergeant Chase.
I would have liked to have seen her go up to the front door and see what happened.
They would have tased her. Okay, so here's a little bit of background on this video before we start breaking it down. Her son is... The timeline is her son is at school. He's 11 years old. And I'll read from Radley Balco of Washington Post. The absurdity here is, of course, that a woman who could lose custody of her child for therapeutically using a drug that's legal for recreational use an hour to the west. So she went to Colorado and she got some medicinal cannabis oil, which is not something that can get you high, correct?
Yeah.
And brought it back legally to her home in Kansas. She has Crohn's disease, which is a very painful disease, and we'll play a clip of her on that in just a second and what it does for her. And so her son was asked to... All right, I contacted the Garden City Police Department, this is Radley Balco, to verify some of the details that had been reported online. A spokesman confirmed that officers had searched Banda's home, though he denied it was a raid. He also said that the initial anti-drug program was put on entirely by the school. The police had no involvement. So her son is at an anti-drug rally at school, and they start talking about medical marijuana. At that event, Banda's son apparently contradicted some of the claims made about marijuana. The school then contacted the Child Protection Agency, which then contacted the police. Officers from the department showed up at Banda's home and asked her permission to conduct a search. She refused. They obtained a warrant and searched her home 3 hours after that videotaped incident. The spokesman wouldn't comment on exactly what was found, except to say that there was evidence of drug activity. Banda was then arrested and her son was seized from the home. Currently, there are no criminal charges against her. The spokesman wouldn't comment on whether charges are forthcoming. He added that possession of marijuana is illegal in Kansas without exception. So the son, the boy was defending the drug that helps her deal with her awful condition, and we'll play that audio just here in a moment, using his First Amendment rights in a school to discuss something that helps his mother. He's 11 years old, presumably doesn't know any better, and ends up getting his mom in trouble. So we're going to go to an interview. I guess this came from before this incident where Ben Swan interviewed on benswan.com Shona Banda? Okay. She suffers from Crohn's disease, and he was doing a piece on cannabis oil, and she was actually in the documentary. So this is her speaking about what it does for her.
Start out by telling me about when you were sick, the level to which you were sick, and what that looked like in your life.
Oh, I was, of course, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2002. And in that first year, I had my first bowel resection. Body was recognizing that something was wrong, and my immune system went into overdrive and essentially attacked itself. Your life starts to go downhill. You're in pain constantly, so you can't even think straight. It's hard to go through your day-to-day life when you're constantly thinking about the pain and how to get rid of it.
Shona's condition was so bad that her teeth literally became soft and the roof of her mouth had turned black. She couldn't stand and says she parented her children from the couch. Described like having a stomach flu every day for years, despite all the medications and the doctors. Shona was rotting from the inside out. Shona's breakthrough came when she saw a YouTube documentary, Run from the Cure by Rick Simpson, which explained how to extract CBD and THC oil from marijuana.
In 2001, my family doctor informed me that there was nothing more they could do. They had nothing left to try on me, so I was on my own.
Shona had started smoking marijuana just to be able to function, but she wasn't getting better. Shona's husband at the time, he wanted to get her a vaporizer, but that vaporizer became the road to so much more.
He went and got me a very old-fashioned glass dome vaporizer from the 70s, and I was reading a book, and I pinched off that hose way too long, and oil started forming on the dome. And he went out and got me a spatula, and I started to scrape it out 3 times a day, and I put whatever I could get into a gel cap. And within 3 days, I didn't need the use of my cane anymore to walk, and I started healing quite rapidly. So rapidly that I started to write a journal.
That journal would become a book, Live Free or Die. Shona's mantra for her own life and the lives of the people she continues to educate across the country on the benefits of cannabis oil today. But politicians and media are making CBD oil out to be the kind of good kind of cannabis, while arguing that THC is the bad kind of cannabis. Now listen, while that's not how any of this works, that is the case that is subtly being made. As that happens, 2 forces will likely come into play. Keep an eye on. Number 1, in order to push the market away from the small sellers and the harvesters of CBD oil, states, along with the feds, will likely create a regulatory climate that is so difficult to manage that they will, through cronyism, force CBD oil into the hands of a few, which in turn limits supply and then forces the price of the oil to rise considerably.
All right, so that again, it's Ben Swan. If you go to benswan.com, Swan with 2 N's, then you can find that. And again, we'll post these videos up on WeAreLibertarians.com so you can see it. So that is the background on Shona Banda and all that has happened. I'd also like to thank the Periscope viewers. I had a chance during that video to review some of the comments. Yes, I have not shaved. And yes, I spilled ketchup on myself earlier today during lunch. Thank you for pointing that out. I guess that raises a good point. If we're going to do video broadcasting, I should not look like an absolute slob, right?
I think you were going for Steve Jobs, and you didn't quite reach it.
We'll put this up on YouTube so you can check it out. But Greg always has like the He's always well put together, and I'm showing you off, Greg. You've got the nice shoes. You always look like you just walked off the golf course from a fraternity reunion. With your...
The white guilt is not strong.
No. Me, I'm always wearing a black T-shirt, and I look like I just rolled out of bed. So
sometimes you wear lime green.
I do. I'm wearing lime green shorts. I'll show those off later.
Are those No, those aren't the ones. They're not nearly bright enough or good enough.
No, they faded in the laundry. These are it.
Those are it?
Yeah.
The legendary green shorts that Jeff
luster.
Vibert loves.
I'll tell you what, Casey Shove. I'm taking my shirt off. Let's see how you like that.
Oh, wow. Wall After Dark.
So Shona Banda's case comes on the heels of the free-range children case. And it goes back to the same thing. So in the free-range children case that we talked about a few episodes ago, a neighbor, a military vet, is walking his dog and sees two young children, 6 and 10, walking to the park, and calls, instead of going over to the children and having human interaction with his neighbors, he calls the police, and they call CPS after they discover the children are walking half a mile to a park.
Unsupervised.
The parents made the decision. The kids weren't lost. They weren't in danger. The only time that they became terrified is when they were kidnapped by the state government agency.
Which is terrifying, even as an adult.
The parents then became terrified because their children had gone missing, and when they couldn't find their children and weren't reunited with them for 5 hours. In this case, the school, in the middle...
Drug week?
A drug week... where they're talking about how you shouldn't do drugs and just say no. Also, fun statistic, DARE, we had the DARE program growing up.
Oh, yeah.
DARE, I don't know what it stands for. I never did drugs, but it wasn't because of DARE, it was because of my parents.
Drug and alcohol, or something prevention. It didn't work.
Yeah. DARE schools have higher drug use
no kidding.
than other schools, yes.
Tell an adult or tell a teenager they can't do something and
Right.
watch how quickly they go for it.
Right. So it was DARE week or whatever, and her 11-year-old son decided to stand up for her mom. His mom is a cannabis activist, so presumably his mom doesn't... If there's a right that needs wronged, or a wrong that needs righted, whatever, same diff, then she's going to stand up for it and say, listen, here's my story, here's what's going on. And it sounds like he was doing the same, where they're talking about how marijuana is bad and you shouldn't do it, and he says, okay, but my mom has been helped. My mom was parenting from the couch. My mom was not a functional mother, according to her story, as told to Ben Swan. And then she started using cannabis oil, and now she can get through the day, she can parent. So what you're telling me doesn't sound correct, teacher lady.
Yeah.
And instead of the school and the principal, having human interaction with the people in their community and calling and saying, is this true? What's going on? Can we talk about this? We heard something. We're concerned about it. We want to just talk through it and hear your story. They didn't do that. They called the police.
Immediately.
And so now Shona's children are in the CPS system, and they've been, with no charges filed, her children have been awarded to her ex-husband, who knows what his story is.
Well, now, the reason no charges have been filed, I imagine, is because CPS isn't done conducting their investigation and filing the report, a formal report or advisory document.
Now, I've heard conflicting stories that it is not illegal to have the substance in Kansas, and it sounds like the police department there is saying that it is. That it's cannabis and you're not allowed to have it.
Not that the police department would know.
Clearly.
Clearly. I would doubt that the cops, cops aren't attorneys.
What? They damn well should be.
They should know the law, but I'm just saying that's not why they're hired. They're hired to uphold the law.
I mean, seriously, you listen to these police officers that come to her home, and they have no clue about what her constitutional rights are. Their job is not to protect their ass. Their job is to protect the people that they're protecting. Their job is to be the front lines of defense for the Constitution and for the Fourth Amendment and for the First Amendment and the Second and the Third and the Fifth and the Fourth and the 10th and the rest of the Constitution. And they clearly have no concept of what they are and are not allowed to do under the obviously, in a nation of laws where we've moved away from the nation of laws, now a nation of men.
Yeah.
Where whatever whim we have at any moment, and Congress and the Supreme Court can amend this document in whatever way they'd like. It is, of course, very hard to keep up with what the law says. But this is pretty damn clear. You don't have a warrant, so you don't have a right to be on my property. I'm telling you to leave, and now get off my porch.
I think I found out while we were listening to that. I'm pretty sure I found out what their strategy is going to be. So there is such a thing as exigent circumstances, which there's a legal precedent for preventing the destruction of evidence. In this scenario, since they received a tip, and the tip was from a school administrator,
right?
Originating from the child, they have. I would bet you anything, even if it went to the Supremes, or that'd be a long road, but even before the Kansas courts, that they absolutely will be upheld in preventing the destruction of evidence. Their reasoning being her going in there and then pouring it down the drain, doing anything necessary, that it would be an unfounded investigation.
Right, but they didn't have a warrant.
They don't need one to prevent.
They can't to prevent?
You don't need it to prevent destruction.
Okay, because that's not... I heard an interview with a constitutional scholar from the Rutherford Institute on Glenn Beck, and he said what they did was absolutely out of line, that they're
he's
not
also
allowed
a
to
literalist, probably, or he's like a Scalia, whereas if it were a Kennedy or someone like that, and it's not like if you interpret the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment literally, you're going to say there's no way they could have prevented her from entering that house.
Sure.
If you're someone that looks at it as it's a living, breathing document and it's not set in stone, as the world changes, we need it to be suitable to our society, you're going to say they were preventing the destruction of material evidence, and that is an exigent circumstance.
Right.
Which is stupid, because it's cannabis oil.
Right.
It's an ointment. Like, it's like Bengay, but made out of, you know what I mean?
Which amazingly led Glenn Beck yesterday to call for the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana.
I know. Who would have thought this would trigger him?
But we posted on the Facebook page the interview with that constitutional lawyer who kind of broke this down, and then he just wrote a book. It's called. See if you can find that for me.
Yeah, I'll pull it up for you.
Battleground America, I think it is.
Battleground America.
And he's from the Rutherford Institute. And by the end of that, I just wanted to curl up in a ball and cry, because it was just awful. They talked about the panopticon concept, which we've talked about.
And that's
where you're constantly being watched and it makes you go crazy.
And it was
Battleground America, I think.
Battleground America.
I think that's what it is. But yeah, I just...
Jill Lepore?
No, that's not it. Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth?
Yep, Battlefield Earth. Maybe somebody on Periscope or one of these various 100 million sites that we have can look that up in the super secret Facebook group. But so I want to talk about the videotaping of this, because they clearly were annoyed with it. They clearly did not like that it was taking place. But a good lawyer can take the slightest little thing that happened in that interaction, and it doesn't matter. Let's say that they have exigent circumstances all day long, and she's not allowed to go into her house. But there may be another piece of that video that the lawyer can then pick apart and say, look, you were not allowed to do that. You did this. It should be thrown out.
Yeah.
And
the real question is, most of material, so it'd be material evidence, would be finding the oil and preventing its destruction. But that every case I could find and look up was in reference to them doing a no-knock entry. Mm-hmm. So they could enter in order to prevent it. This is a little bit different in the aspect that they actually I don't know that that's even law, or it would even be considered, or there'd be an established case on it. They actually either lied to her to prevent her from entering, or they actually did prevent her from entering, which I don't know whether either would be a traditionally established precedent for preventing the destruction of material evidence.
Right. Yeah, Battlefield America. I should have looked up his name. What am I doing? But so I totally didn't listen to anything you said, Greg.
Well, no, almost all the case law and all the precedents surrounding it are based upon them entering the house with without a warrant,
right?
In order to prevent material evidence.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, though, it's different. They either lied to her and purposely misdirected her from entering in order to, make sure that wasn't destroyed, or they have established precedent. There is an established precedent. I just don't know what it is in order to prevent an individual from entering their property without a warrant or without an injunction, in order to keep the material evidence from being destroyed in that interim period before they actually get a warrant.
Right.
Which, regardless, none of it matters, because you know what really matters to me. What this boils down to is that a child can incriminate their parent, even though they're not viewed as a legal adult before the courts.
Right.
So you're saying that a child is able, and I guess that's well established probably by CPS and the like, since there's anonymous reporting hotlines and that type.
Sure.
But they don't have the status of a legal adult, and yet in court they're allowed to, as scientifically established, a non-fully functioning, brain or adult brain. Their testimony or their anonymous report would be considered enough just cause to do something like this.
Yeah, in Indiana, the threshold is 4 years old. So if a 4-year-old and above says something to an adult, then it's the testimony essentially. If a child is 18 months and can say this happened to an adult, and then the adult can report it, and then an investigation is opened by CPS, but it's not. It can't be entered into evidence until the child's after 4 years old.
Well, I wonder in such a scenario, how often are the police immediately? How can CPS immediately dispatch police? Because this was all happened in the same day, correct?
Yeah, it happened in the same. Yeah,
that seems like a pretty quick acceleration of the process. I bet CPS has to go through to filtering out anonymous reports.
I'm just guessing. This is me guessing. I don't know Shona, but somebody who is on Ben Swan advocating cannabis oil is probably pretty well known in her community. She's a target, and probably has the reputation that she's a pothead, and they've just been had discussions amongst themselves at the school. If he says anything, let's do this. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, or they said anything he says, be on high alert, so we know he's not in a good environment,
right?
A state approved environment.
Because maybe the parent, and this is the scary part. Let's say, obviously it's just wild speculation here. She goes and she wrestles the jimmy of the kid's teacher or the principal or something and says one cross word, and then all of a sudden the kid argues too passionately for marijuana at 11 years old, and they call CPS on her.
Yeah.
And you know what? Her kids are taken. It doesn't matter if criminal charges are never filed. Her kids, a family court can just take them away.
Yeah.
Family court and criminal court are two different things. And so if the family court decides a judge has ultimate power over a family. Because if a judge says it is in the best interest of the 11-year-old that they are not to live with either the mother or the father, they go into the foster system. And, the foster system is a nightmare for most of the time. Andy Horning...
Clear track record of success.
Yeah, Andy Horning did a press conference in 2008 when he ran for governor on CPS in Indiana and the foster care system and how much of a nightmare it is, with a group called Honk for Kids, I think it was. I think there's a press conference of that. I will post that up on the Facebook page or on the website. It'll all be at one of those places or both. And he talked about foster care system within like a week of being in the foster care system. Most children are molested. I mean,
oh yeah,
he had a specific statistic, but it was shocking how altered your life can be if you go into the foster care system. So you're telling me that environment is better than the mother who is using cannabis oil to become an effective parent because she doesn't want to sit on the couch and be in horrible pain from Crohn's disease anymore.
Or the one that walks to the park that's a mile away, unsupervised. Right. That is such a dangerous and awful scenario to be raised in. It's much better to go right into the arms of a molester.
And so out of the fear of losing your children, you just become a good citizen.
Yeah, well, you do what the state says.
Right.
Which, goes to the fundamental question is a child an individual, or an individual with their own complete set of rights and human rights and human or natural rights, human rights, and then allocated rights by the state, or are they the property of the parent with maybe blended rights or certain rights? or are they the property of the state and the community because the community funds the development and education of the child?
Right. But it is clear in both of these cases that the state can kidnap your children. You're not in charge of your own children anymore.
Yeah, so regardless of whether either of those views of a child is right, clearly we're seeing a world where more and more the fact that that's your kid isn't necessarily true.
Right.
You know?
The same goes for her property.
Yeah.
She doesn't own her property. The government doesn't have a warrant. And they just went right in. I mean, Battlefield America, I've got to get this book. It just, the interview, I can't speak high enough about that interview to kind of give you an overview of what's going on in America, or read any Radley Balco book.
Yeah.
The tens of thousands of no-knock raids that are taking place across our nation, with SWAT teams. It's eerily reminiscent of what was happening in 1776 and
the general writ and warrant.
Exactly right.
That was licensed to do whatever you wanted as an agent of the law.
Right.
That's the SS, the Gestapo. That's
it's any totalitarian state.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that we're in a totalitarian state. So that's but
now all it takes is precedent, and then it's the slippery slope, and people get mad at that argument or whatever. Granted, I mean, we have the Fourth Amendment, but we've set legal precedent where there've been rulings, justifications, interpretations, even all of that, which may or may not grant license, does not stop agents of the police from doing something. Then you have to go before the court system and find out if you've been wronged,
right,
and spend X amount of dollars.
So in that interview with, and I'm going to look up his name right now to give him credit, John Whitefield, author of Battlefield America.
Let's say Battlefield Earth is Ron L. Hubbard.
I know.
Betting
that was
wasn't
a joke.
The one you wanted.
That was a joke. So there's an exchange in here that someone actually, our friend Jonathan Upton sent this to us and said, hey, you need to pay attention. How many times on the show have we said, we're not a totalitarian state. This is the kind of nation where we can have a podcast and we can bitch about the government and nothing happens to us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can totally do that. And in the United States, the government would be the last thing that would shut you down for saying things against the state. But way before that, you'd see what you see with Russian and talk radio and any non-state approved opinion is they always will try to use dollars and public opinion, which transforms into taking you off air because you can't get advertisers or whatever your medium is.
So John says, by the way, Glenn, there's 1.5 million of these so-called civil commitments that happen each year in America. Glenn says, what does that mean? John says, that means a board of social workers and psychologists. If someone is complaining about Facebook pages or a neighbor is complaining about them, they meet and decide whether or not this individual may be a danger. And then the police go and get him and take him into a hearing in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security.
With DHS?
Uh-huh.
Whoa.
1.5 million of these civil commitments. I almost want to question that because it seems like there'd be a much bigger, like that would be popping up more than it is.
I mean, just the fact that DHS is involved at all.
Oh, yeah. No, he talked about in that interview a veteran who was a 9/11 truther and was posting stuff on his Facebook page and was civilly committed. That's how they got to this. You got to listen to it.
Oh yeah, I haven't had a chance to, but I'm going to.
That's
incredible.
There's a free podcast too. This was the April 23rd episode of Glenn Beck. I mean, I don't care what you think about Glenn Beck. The interview with the guy is spectacular, and you should listen to it. And kudos for Beck for having him on.
Yeah,
but yeah, pretty amazing. So I don't know. There's so many. She has a GoFundMe page, by the way. If we'll link to it. She currently has $36,200 from 1,300 donors in 10 days. If she had said, I hate gay people, she'd have $1 million.
Here in Indiana, that pizza place.
Memories Pizza. They have $1 million because they wouldn't serve gays.
And they're probably just going to take that money, say, to hell with the lawsuit, and we're going to, go off and retire.
And so Glenn Beck put his audience on it, and they funded, over in the course of a week, his audience put $1 million into their bank account.
Absolutely.
He plugged this woman's thing, and she's got 36,000.
People, I mean, and that plays right to, one, the, demonization of marijuana usage by the war on drugs in the United States, and then two, the glorification of police officers and agents of the law, and it's hero worship. But we're making progress. We just haven't got there all the way yet.
Right. So, I just
it's
it
baffling.
Just pisses me off.
It really does, and it makes you hate cops.
Yeah.
And that may not be the right sentiment, but I mean, I have always, I think I was born hating police. I have hated them all my life. I don't know why and I have individuals we both do that are friends that we know well, and just, I couldn't think more highly of, and I can't even broach the issue.
Right.
Or I am incapable of having a civil discussion with it about them because of their default support position.
Right.
They lack any ability to be objective or influenced based on circumstantial evidence.
See, I'm different than you. I mean, I've grown up very jingoistic. My last name's Spangle. That's my real last name. And so when you have a name that resembles the national anthem, you're a little jingoist.
You are.
You love your country. I talked earlier in this episode actually about the Support the Troops rally, the pro-war rally that I had in 2003. I actually just grabbed the DVD. I'm thinking about putting it up on YouTube.
You were a little Cheney in training.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Yeah. But I don't hate cops. I don't envy anybody that works for the state. Anybody that works for a government entity, you are put in a position where, I think we're fed these lines of service, community service, and the best way to serve your community is through the government. And so you want to serve your community, so you go into it, and you go into it with good intentions, and then it changes you over time. I actually shadowed police officers, the Plainfield PD, in senior year of high school because I considered becoming a police officer. And the police officer, I think his name was Brian, said, after 15 years, you spend 90% of your time around the 10% of the population that causes all the trouble, and so you just start to think that everybody is like that 10% of the population that commits crimes, of which I'm sure 9% is drug-related in Plainfield. And he said, so after about 15 years, you just become like a calloused person to it. You just become hardened towards humanity. You lose that. And I'm at 8 years, so I haven't gotten there. And I don't know that I want to do it after 15 years because I don't ever want to get to a point where I lose my humanity. We show up at Subway to have lunch, and his sergeant is eating lunch with us. And and he's just going on. He's been on the force for like 20 years, just going on about all these idiots and these losers and these people that are just awful and on and on and on and on. And I looked at the cop and he looked at me and just kind of shook his head and we both started laughing. It's like, what are you laughing at? Like, nothing, Sergeant.
What are you hiding?
Right.
Well, I mean, it has to be dehumanized. Like you quit viewing them as people and you start viewing them as enemies of the state or the enemy.
That was a story that came out in Ferguson, that the police officers started referring to the other side, the protesters in Ferguson, as enemies of the state.
Absolutely. Not realizing that it's a democracy and that they got those jobs via an organization that exists entirely by consent of the people out there protesting against them.
Right.
Their power originates, especially at the state level, their power originates in the people, not in the representatives of the state ratifying something.
Right.
But the dehumanization of anyone that you disagree with as a police officer, there's no stopping that because you are a hammer in search for a nail. Everything is a crime. You're on the hunt to find it, and you do it in the name of preventing civil unrest or protecting the public or whatever you believe. Yeah, that isn't it. This goes back to the people that are fit to be police officers are the people that don't want to be. They're the individuals who should, I don't support the usage of force very often, but almost the community could say, we want this person to be a police officer because they have no interest in being one. You know, a philosopher king, really, if you will.
It's like president. I don't want somebody to be president if they want to be president.
Exactly. Yeah. That is an immediate disqualification in that type of role, especially when the stakes are so high.
Right.
I mean, just this intervention in this family's life will change the course it was on forever.
Sure. Absolutely.
It'll have damaging effects. Who knows? Maybe it'll have positive effects for the whole, if this goes before the courts and they reach a different decision than I bet they're going to reach. But they don't see themselves as disruptive influences on the course of society.
Right.
They view it like they're contained in these individual interactions. And what we're seeing today with the changing narrative is the explosion of all these little events blowing up to the point where if the tide continues and cops are no longer seen as heroes, there's a scenario where we are the enemy and it's their job and they're going to do everything they can to fight to hold on to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's the government. The government is force. And so they do have all the power.
They absolutely do.
Unless and John Whitefield of the Rutherford Institute talked about, when Glenn asked him, what can we do? He talked about form a local nonprofit, a civil rights board in your community. And so you are now acting as the civil rights board. You gather a network of community leaders who are interested in making a difference and making sure that these actions by police are reviewed, not by a government entity, but by a civilian watchdog group of people that are not interested. And by disinterested, it's the
jury of your peers concept.
Right. Disinterested is a phrase that popped up a lot amongst the founders, and it means no interest in the outcome, no incentive for you to make a decision one way or the other. Not, we don't really care, disinterested. And so I think that is a fantastic idea. I think if you're in your local community, almost everybody's under the jurisdiction of a police force, unless you're like out in like the middle of Nevada or something.
Or Liberland over in Europe, the new autonomous anarcho-capitalist society.
Right. So think about forming one of these boards. And I'm sure there are boards that are already starting to form. I mean, you start to get some of the Black Lives Matter crowd. And I think it's important for, like, there's definitely in the Al Sharpton, I mean, we have a group here called the Concerned Clergy. And the Concerned Clergy is made up of black ministers who sort of watch over Indianapolis politics and then mobilize people to protect their interest and of their special interest group. And I have no problem with that. I think that's great, and that's what they're there for. But then there's another group called the 10-Point Coalition. The 10-Point Coalition, and we talked about this group with Jason Sipe. Charles Harrison was thinking about running for office, mayor, until he was pressured into not running for mayor by the Democrats. He's headed this group, and it's made up of all kinds of different civic leaders and people in the community of any race, color, creed, background. All they do is just patrol the streets at night in the high crime areas and act as another presence. So if there are issues, then people on that block help break up the fight.
Absolutely.
Instead of bringing the police out to make the situation worse, because that community and that street has no regard for the police.
They have no relationship. There's none of those individuals that are in the police force.
They then use their neighbors. You're going to hurt me. I live down the street from you. You know, I'm the one who mowed your lawn when you were sick or whatever, you know. And so it's much more likely when people in a community engage with each other, it's much better for everyone involved. It would be much better for everyone involved in both of these CPS situations that we talked about recently, for the member of the community to have a direct conversation with the other member of the community, as opposed to getting the government authorities involved. Voluntary interaction, imagine that.
I know. And that brings humanity back into the application of law and the law enforcement, which we don't see anymore whatsoever, because that non-interest, while I'd be, it's suspect whether you can ever get to truly non-interested, but like even citizens who they don't know and don't think about, if you serve on a jury duty, you're selected based on, a prejudice or a psychological profile or a likelihood based on, demographic data, and whether or not you would support someone in a trial or be against them. But that isn't clearly enough. And so hopefully, you can form these civic governing associations or watchdog associations. That would take time, and it would, I'm not sure how, in time it'd be extremely efficient and it would be extremely protective. If you want revenge now, report the cops kid. I'm not kidding, because I believe, like we've talked before, that the Liberty Panopticon put every government employee under 24/7 surveillance. Never, even when they go home. If you take a job with the government, you're under surveillance. You are always watched. Everything is recorded. Everything is documented, and every infraction is publicized. It should be on the cover of the Indy Star every time they screw up. If you want that sort of antagonistic action, I mean, we receive it clearly, so give it right back to the agents of the law. But if this happened to me, I would look up which one of the members of the police force had children and make anonymous reports that they were into child porn, that they were into drug usage.
That seems a little aggressive. That seems like that might be against the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle, though, would state I've already been aggressed against, especially in this scenario. So if I'm Shonda, God, you just went full Maya.
But I mean, if I'm Shonda and this happened to me,
yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
I would.
I just don't want you to start encouraging listeners to start reporting police officers for child porn when you have
we know
no
they're
evidence.
Around weapons, and that's an unsafe environment.
I mean, that's you can't do that.
Of course you can, because if you've been infringed against. Now, I don't have the same interpretation of mine that voting is an aggressive act, or that just the existence of the police is an aggressive act against me. But if a cop takes an aggressive act against me, or something I perceive as like being pulled over with no just cause, and it has to be equitable for me. This is my guiding principle. I wouldn't justify shooting a cop because he gave me a speeding warning, but I would justify that if the police officer in question is going to possibly take away my children, I am going to return serve.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can understand that.
Yeah, because that's justice to me. Right. Justice is not me being infringed against and waiting that hopefully in 20 years I can get a civic governing board with enough credibility and oversight in order to finally get that justice.
Sure. Let's try it my way.
Oh, yeah, we'll try it your way. If that doesn't work out and you want to rustle some jimmies, say that you saw the cop's child, at 6 years old doing firing practice in their backyard.
Harry Price, our good friend, writes, police should have to live in the neighborhoods they patrol.
Absolutely.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think, obviously, where's the freedom of choice? It's like, well, you're a public servant, and so, you give up when you take a government paycheck a certain amount of your rights.
Absolutely, just like when you join the military. You're property of the government, not...
Right. Okay, I feel like we've covered a lot. What have we missed on that?
We've covered it. The precedent has been set that your child no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the state. And even when it's a family court law and the judge is involved and the judge gets to determine what is not or is in the child's best interest, they are still acting as an agent on behalf of the state and through a framework and governing philosophical lens of what the state says is in the child's best interest. So it's impossible to decouple those two.
Yeah. Be a decent person. Talk to your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors.
Love one another.
Yeah. It's like this.
It's like some guy said it once.
Some dude said that, I think.
Hippie. He probably had cannabis oil.
Muhammad. I don't know. All right. So what else should we talk about, Greg? We talked... it's been a long episode already. It doesn't feel like it. We're only 55 minutes into you and I.
Whoa.
That means we're at a 2-hour episode already.
We are, which we did 243 with Gina and Harry. Is that right? 244?
It was somewhere. No, that was the 100 episode. We can go as long as we want. That's what the people like, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's what the people want. More of us.
The only other interesting thing that I had prepared for, and I don't know how much you've followed, and I don't know how interesting it is to libertarians, but we tend to get positive feedback on foreign policy and foreign intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Yemen it's funny. I fell prey to this until I did some more research and really got down to the foreign news outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the United States it's being portrayed as a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And it isn't. I had no idea how little influence or how little assistance, even telling the Houthi rebels not to actually perform this coup, they warned them against it. And this is an organization that is their leader was martyred, and his brother ended up taking and creating almost an ideology. And it's a very peaceful form of Shia Islam, but it isn't exactly in alignment with the I guess you could say state-sponsored Shia Islam of Iran. And they've never really had a close connection, and now they do. Or now the U.S. media and the European media are reporting there is that connection, and Saudi Arabia is getting worried. This has been going. Saudi Arabia has been on high alert since the Arab Spring. They haven't. They don't like the idea of the citizens taking control and instituting and questioning whether or not they are in fact divinely anointed,
right,
royal house. And
as we heard in the earlier in the episode, I read actually Rouhani's comments to the people of Iran, and Harry's just thanking me for noticing. Dear leader noticed him, and so he's happy. Rouhani, it almost seems like his great challenger, his enemy, is Saudi Arabia. When he speaks to the Iranian people, it's we're working with the Americans. It doesn't matter what the American government. It matters what the negotiators at the negotiating table and John Kerry and Barack Obama say. It doesn't matter what the Republicans say. Whatever. But those damn Saudi Arabians, those bastards. I mean,
that is the argument that is the altercation that's bound to happen. There's no preventing that forever. I don't think that Saudi Arabia and their Wahhabism, that their very strict interpretation of fundamental Islam, and then they see the Shia Muslims just every bit as infidels as the Israelis, yet they don't say it as much, but they do. And that's a conflict that's inevitable to happen. And right now, Yemen, with ISIS on the northeastern border of Saudi Arabia, and they consider the House of Assad a false idol.
Right.
Since they're not under the caliphate. And then on the southern border, you have Yemen, which has always been a mess. It unified. It shouldn't have unified because it was a Sunni Shia split. It's just like Iraq. It's never not a mess.
Well, it's because it was drawn by Western powers.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Sykes-Picot divvied up the Middle East, and then in Iran, they are desperate. Their leader gave a speech at the United Nations talking about the Greater Iran, and what it was it's the historical place that Iran is looking to assume, and I think his exact words were, Iran was born with global intentions. It goes back to its foundation myth as basically their version of a caliphate in leadership in an empire. And really, if you have to pick between the ideology of the Islamic State and the ideology of 12 or Shias who are there sort of like Al-Qaeda within the Shia Islam, you pick the 12ers all day because they are not anything near as barbaric and aggressive and expansionist as what you see in the Islamic State and their leadership, which really most of their success is because of Saddam's generals, and the way they're set up.
Right.
But we're seeing in a conflict that is bound to happen. Yemen, it should be two states, Sunni and Shia, which you could probably argue for most of the Middle East. But I don't know that even then, if you allowed people to voluntarily associate after all these years of animosity and aggression, letting such a situation happen isn't going to bring about peace. Especially when you have Israel being our proxy in the region and our democracy spreader, that we don't even allow, Palestinians the right to return. And it is, the more I think about it, I just don't know. I don't even know what even works, because in Iran, we right now are in Iraq fighting ISIS, are using Iranian militia and their Quds force, and Iran has a stated intention of declaring Baghdad the capital of the new Persian Empire. That's where the old one was, and they want to take it back, and they want it to be Baghdad to be the capital of the Iranian Empire, the Persian Empire. They have a distinct hatred for the Arab people.
Yeah, I was looking. I mentioned earlier in the episode, and I can't find it, but have you heard the story of the Christian groups? There's a group of soldiers. I'm trying to look and see if I can find them, but I can't. And they have voluntarily formed a force that's made up of special forces guys, and they've gone over and voluntarily.
United States over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Maybe this is it. Let's see here. Chris Toney? Maybe that's it. Chris Toney. Yeah, that's it. Tone. So if you want to go over and fight ISIS, you can join Chris Toney and do it. And people that want to fight ISIS can send money, and then I don't have to pay for it because I'm a pacifist and I don't believe in it.
Well, are you a pacifist or are you not an interventionist?
Non-interventionists definitely become more of a pacifist.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Except I will aggress against you because you're giving me that look.
Well, no, I
will fight you.
I know. No, I know that. So you wouldn't even return serve? If aggressed against or threatened with your livelihood?
I don't know. It's a really good question.
Or do you just want martyrdom and you want there to be a rebellion like Spanglism? I
want my name etched across pyramids. No, I don't know. I think I'll have to think more about that. I think you called me out on it. I really haven't thought it through as much as I thought I had.
Well, like I understand pacifism, but I think it's tough to figure out if it's always tough if put in that place, if faced with death or life or death, what am I going to do? And just how animalistic and primal would I react?
Oh, you pooped in your hand earlier and threw it on the wall.
That's right. Absolutely.
You love violence.
I don't love it. I invite it. And I don't necessarily love it. I love to pretend I do because it's a deterrent.
Right.
If you walk around like you just can't wait to nuke everybody, no one messes with you. They just leave you alone. Yeah. It's like Kim Jong-un. Nobody ever threatens to invade North Korea. He fires off rockets, says he has nukes, acts crazy. When was the last time someone even tried to get in the country?
Yeah, but is there any resources there? Come on.
Well, yeah. Actually, the South is the one that's barren. And, they after, and this ties back because what Obama's doing is funny. Charles Krotheimer wrote about it in the Washington Post yesterday. He's calling it the fulfillment of the Nixon doctrine, which I never really thought about it, but Obama is so similar to Nixon, it's crazy. Like, yeah. Nixon was a progressive conservative Republican, and he ushered in the EPA, which is probably at the time every bit as of a liberal achievement as healthcare. Federally subsidized healthcare.
Right.
So their beliefs and their views of the world, even their monetary policies, are so similar.
Right.
They're basically the same person. Even though people would scream foul because Nixon was arguably horrible person.
He really was.
Yeah, liar, fraud. I mean, he was everything. He was Frank Underwood, but he got caught.
Right. I don't feel like Barack Obama's a horrible person. I feel like he's just kind of incompetent.
Yeah, like their achievements mimic each other.
Right.
Even though they're probably their beliefs and philosophies of how to behave are quite different. But so he wants to make Middle Eastern wars fought by Middle Easterners. And that was the Vietnam War with Nixon. He wanted Vietnam to the Vietnamization of the Vietnam War. They to fight on their own behalf.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the president's pursuing in the Middle East. He wants Middle Eastern countries, Arabian armies, Persian armies, whatever, fight your own damn wars, keep the flow of oil open, because that's what Yemen's about. There's a strait that I think it's like 90% of the world's oil flows through, or of that hemisphere's oil flows through. And, at least keep your act together enough to not disrupt the oil markets and cause devastating turmoil that ripples throughout every government and civilization.
Other than Libya, now obviously the covert stuff has never stopped. If anything, that's accelerated. The use of drone strikes has hit unprecedented levels, and we ought to mention the drone strike that
we got two more. We got
two innocent Americans were killed in overseas drone strikes. But he has resisted the urge, like Clinton bombed Tylenol factories, and obviously Bush invaded some countries.
Liberated.
Liberated. He brought freedom to the Iraqis, and boy, don't the Christians in Iraq feel free right now.
They feel so much better under ISIS than they did under Saddam. It's incredible.
Right. He has resisted, things like Syria and escalating these wars, and has tried to use diplomacy a little bit more, much like Nixon. I mean, he really, And looking at the opening of Cuban relations, sort of a Chinese moment.
Yep, he is very much. It's just amazing how eerily they're or what they believe.
Right.
They're and I didn't even think about Cuba. That's brilliant. Cuba and China, yeah.
Yeah.
And
even to some extent, he's opening that pathway with Iran, too.
He is. And it's like we've said on this podcast before, the Iranians, without question, should be our ally in the Middle East.
We talked about it earlier in the show on this episode with Nick and I. After reading that, you go, well, gee, aren't these guys much better allies to us than, the guys that are selling Christian women into sex slavery?
Yeah. I would tend to believe that, especially because if you look at Yemen, and this is what's often lost in the debate, right now, ISIS is, it's like we've mentioned before, ISIS is got all the momentum within the fundamental Islam movement and jihadism and driving the West out of the Middle East and interfering. But if you look at Yemen, the north of Yemen was AQ... what do they call it? AQP, or AQAP. Mm-hmm. So Al Qaeda in the Arab Peninsula, and that's where the guy that was the shoe bomber in the United States on Christmas Day in Detroit that was landing. That is their leadership. Is this individual?
Oh, okay.
And it used to be Anwar al-Awlaki before we killed him and his son.
Right.
And then the South has always been more of the Shia influenced, where the Houethanes are named after a guy with that last name. Mm-hmm. And there's been a clash, but so our biggest fear is Al Qaeda, and fundamental Islam or the Sunnis, and yet we're not backing these rebels. We're going to back Saudi Arabia, who hates the Shias and want to overthrow the rebels because we propped up their president who escaped into Saudi Arabia, who really just left the capital, and it wasn't even a coup. They just walked in.
Yeah.
It was literally like just assuming power because he was a little bit threatened. And then now you have Baghdadi being hit. Now you have Osama bin Laden's preferred physics teacher in Iraq as the new leader of the caliphate. Mm-hmm. And we're just seeing a world where it makes no sense at all why we support who we support.
And it doesn't make sense that we're fighting against ourselves in Yemen. And Yemen itself doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, Yemen, I got on Google Maps the other day, or on Google Earth, and just kind of drove around Saudi Arabia and Oman and Yemen, and I just looked around, and there's just nothing there. It's really a pile of sand. What is the strategic...
strait that all the oil flows through.
Oh, okay.
That's
right.
And so, like, Iran was going to send shipment of there. I guarantee you, there were no goods on the shipment or the boat that was being sent over by the Iranian government of goods and humanitarian supplies. They had authorized a boat to go to Yemen, make port, and help supposedly help the rebels, but it was really for the citizens. But the United States took several warships and sent them there as a deterrent.
Yeah,
turned right back around.
So if you think about Saudi Arabia and you think about Africa, there's Djibouti and Eritrea on the African side, and then there's like a little the tip of Yemen. It kind of juts down, and so there's a strait there down in the bottom corner, and it's pretty darn narrow. And then that goes up to there's the Gulf of Aden, and that goes into the Red Sea, which then takes you up to the canal up there. What's the canal? The Suez Canal.
Suez Canal, yeah.
Up by Alexandria in Egypt. So if you're exporting oil from Iraq, from Iran in the Persian Gulf, United Arab Emirates, you're taking it out of the Persian Gulf, you're taking it around the UAE, out into the Arabian Sea, there between Saudi Arabia and India, and then you're going into the Gulf of Aden, up through the straits And
it's Europe's gas supply.
Exactly right. Yeah, I can totally see that.
And
if
so
you look at a map,
it is literally the engine of oil gas. Now Russia's got a vested interest in all this, and that's what's funny is so like the nuclear arms deal that's been tentatively agreed to and has to be done by June 30th. Russia is going to get to be the enforcement arm of whether or not they are making advances in nuclear arms.
Right.
Which, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't suspect that Putin is going to do a fantastic job of a country as historical and vastly interested ties to doing the enforcement of whether or not they're developing nuclear weapons.
Right.
And on top of that, they just authorized the sale of an $800 million security system, missile prevention system to Iran that they had originally backed out of. And then that was thrown in as like a sweetener to get Iran to actually come to the table and agree. And I found out that most of the way the negotiations happened after looking more into it were really funny. The United States has relied on Israel so much for their intelligence on Iranian capabilities in developing nuclear weapons that at the discussions we would say, we need you to do this. And their representative would say, I can't even respond to that because that intelligence is so false that it isn't something that we can even do. And this happened repeatedly to the point where they were offended and was what drove. That's what happened at that last hour when they threatened to walk out.
Oh, wow.
Is they were saying, we can't even respond to the allegations you're making because it's so... it isn't even... One, it's not physically possible. And two, we don't even know how to begin where to start to take down such an absurd rumor.
Right.
And it was because our intelligence comes through the Israelis.
Right. All right, so let's wrap up on that. I'd like to publicly shame James Neese for mocking me on my... we have one viewer. We're really popular on Periscope. People are really... We're going to keep doing this because we've got one viewer on the Periscope, and it's James Neese.
I love James Neese.
So I am to name drop James Neese and his hot dogs.
Oh, yeah, he's got a hot dog eating contest tonight.
And I, at the state convention, hot dogs.
Yeah.
At the state convention for the Libertarian Party, and he is so he owes me $5 because I promoted it. I'm a cheap.
Are you going, by the way?
I'm going tomorrow.
Are
Yes.
you?
Yep.
Nice.
And United Arab Emirates, most American pronunciation ever. Dog.
There's no N.
Yeah. Whatever. Final thoughts for this episode, Greg.
I'll tell you, we haven't talked about it at all, but my oh my, is Hillary Clinton crumbling. It sure appears that there was a pay for play in that all of the wealth they've accumulated over the since Bill left in this foundation is not friendships and the promoting sustainable economic growth. It has every bit the appearance of, do you want to get this accomplished? Because the State Department has to approve foreign sales of strategic assets like uranium. Or U.S. assets strategically, that it would have every appearance that it was a pay-to-play scheme. And the liberal press will fight it like hell, but I would never elect Hillary as my candidate, even if I was in the Democratic Party and was a lifelong liberal.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. And I think this is my final thought if you're wrapped up, but I think it goes into this. In some ways, I think the Tea Party worked. Because if you look at this field of candidates, they managed to get Ted Cruz, or at least raise enough sentiment. Maybe not the Tea Party groups themselves, not those people. But move the conversation to the point that it was possible for a Ted Cruz and a Rand Paul and Marco Rubio at the time to kind of rise up. And get elected to Senate. I mean, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz were flukes. There's no reason that Trey Grayson should have lost to Rand Paul and Dewhurst.
Yeah, Dewhurst.
Dewhurst, the lieutenant governor
of Texas.
Of Texas should have lost, and Trey Grayson was the attorney general, I believe, or the secretary of state, or had some official position and lost to
the attorney general of state
to Rand Paul in Kentucky and Ted Cruz, and now they're running for president and. You hear a lot of the Tea Party base and conservatives that I follow on Facebook, they're very excited about Ted Cruz. Obviously the Libertarians, for the most part, are excited about Rand Paul. I listened to an interview with Scott Walker, and I got to say, I mean, not somebody I would vote for, but he was pretty impressive in defending his accomplishments. Then I saw John Kasich on Meet the Press.
He's off the charts.
I mean, he is a guy that has a ton of experience and I've talked to him a few times back in his radio days, because he's done a radio show and he's done TV and he's polished. You all down the line. I mean, it's totally different than it was in 2008 and 2012. Like, there are candidates
coming out of the woodwork.
Obviously, Marco Rubio is well spoken, good speaker.
He goes like the president. Extemporaneous, he is terrible.
Yeah, and he
you
kind of
give him a platform to rise above, and he hits it at home runs.
He's kind of an empty suit, in my opinion. And then obviously Jeb Bush is
a Bush,
and will raise a ton of money and is the media's darling.
He's still riding the Reagan coattails.
And then Chris Christie and Mike Huckabee, for whatever reason, have the worst self-awareness ever. And are still going to run. Rick Perry apparently is still going to run.
He's the one to watch.
And he's the one that you like.
Well, I don't like him.
I'm
love
just
him.
Saying, whatever.
I really don't. I think that he's going to hit anger better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, remember how Newt hit anger in the debates?
Mm-hmm.
Rick Perry is a Baptist minister, even, firebrand, hellfire, and brimstone in a debate.
Yeah, like Christie and Huckabee have no self-awareness. Like, Chris, buddy.
What are you doing?
Big man to big man. There's no reason for you to run. No one likes you.
He should challenge Hillary. He'd have a much better chance of becoming president if he primaried Hillary as a Democrat.
So I think if you look at the Republican field, there's a ton of choices, and if you're a Republican, every flavor is represented in the 32 Baskin-Robbins roster. If you're a Democrat, your choice is one corrupt Democrat that's been in the center of every failed policy for the last 30 years.
Carly Fiorina, who's another Republican that's throwing her name in the hat, and Trump. Carly Fiorina had the best line. I was so impressed by her to be able to come up with this on the spot. They said, in my administration, as opposed to Barack Obama's with Hillary Clinton, flying would not be an accomplishment as Secretary of State. And I thought, catfight is ready to come out now.
It's like John Kerry has done. Think about what a worthless, ineffective person John Kerry was made out to be in 2004, and he's been twice as effective at all kinds of different things.
He's
as
been
Secretary
amazing.
Of State. So
he literally is the reason the president's going to pull off the deal.
Yeah. So, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's exercise going on upstairs. So it's exercise. Stop it. Greg just went full middle schooler.
I wonder how I got the impression that might happen, Chris.
So, yeah, I think if you're a Democrat, you're kind of crapping your pants, because there are a ton of really decent choices if you're a Republican. Not saying for us Libertarians. Rand is the closest that we've got on the Republican side. And obviously Gary Johnson's the man, as you heard from Julie.
I wish he'd throw his name in the hat.
But why? Why do that?
I liked it the way he did it last time, because he had the best line of the first debate. That my dog has created more shovel-ready jobs than President Obama.
Yeah.
And that people loved it. I mean, then he fell off. But the more times you see Gary, he was a Republican. He was the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States when he was the governor of New Mexico.
But the problem is if you're Rand Paul and you're in the primaries and you don't win the primaries, you're done in May. And Gary can then go on CNN and all these news stations and be on the television giving the libertarian point of view until November. And I think there's a very real possibility that somebody like Glenn Beck, for instance, is going to go third party if it's Jeb Bush. I mean, he flat out says it on his show. He says, I'm not going to do a Mitt Romney or John McCain again. I'm going third party. And so if you can get Gary Johnson in front of Glenn Beck, that dude has an audience that is loyal to him, that listens to him, he's going to drive votes for Gary. Is that a huge percentage gain? Does that translate into another % of the vote? Who knows? Probably, maybe.
If every one of Glenn Beck's listeners voted, everyone, it'd be a huge chunk, a Perot-sized chunk of the electorate.
So he's looking for a pro-marijuana advocate, pro-legalization advocate for his show. Heard this on that episode yesterday. We've got to tweet and Facebook message and email Glenn Beck and have him get Gary on there, because you heard Julie Borowski talk about Gary and his ability to win her over. Just fantastic candidate.
I mean, he's like so much more accomplished, like in the private industry than any Republican running.
Yeah,
like
no
he
doubt.
has Mitt Romney's level of accomplishment, and yet he's a libertarian,
right?
And he's impressive. He's got a little goober in him, like he's a bit goofy, but he comes off still as commanding. And he's totally that new brand of the Rand Paul crunchy granola Republican,
right?
I mean, Gary Johnson invented that. The guy skis and he's an accomplished award-winning or championship-winning skier.
Right.
Hangs out. He's
climbed all 7 of the top mountains.
Yeah,
in the world.
He's Barry Goldwater, but full-blown libertarian and cool
Right.
and accomplished in the private market.
Yeah, but I just would rather have him run as a libertarian and give the libertarian message the whole time, because what good does it do? He was done in February. So you tell me, okay, run as a Republican. You're going to go to all these Republican events. You're going to be compared to Rand Paul, which is already happening. You're fighting for Rand Paul's delegates. I mean, you've already got Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and to some extent Rubio and Walker fighting for those same delegates and votes. Why add another person to that mix? Because Rand Paul, I think, has gone about as libertarian as you can go,
and still pursue the
nomination. And I know that drives libertarians crazy because he's not full-throated anti-drug warrior like Gary Johnson.
He is. He just doesn't say it.
Right. And so Julie kind of talked about it in her interview. I totally agree. I've said it forever. I have a trust problem a little bit. She didn't say that exactly, but she kind of said, I'd like him to be a little more clear. And I think that's my deal with him too. So
really, you don't fundamentally believe that he's his dad?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't know which. I don't want you to play both sides.
His dad said it to us.
Yeah, but I'm going to take his brother and his dad's word for it. I mean, they have an interest in making sure that Rand does well because
actually,
they love
that's a deterrent. Them coming out and saying that. Realistically, within the Republican primary,
good old Ron. Ron came out.
Oh God, he's got to quit doing these commercials.
He's helping. Don't help Ron. My take on Ron Paul at this point is that it's like going to see Journey or 38 Special or Leonard Skinner now in 2015. It's like I want to go see Leonard Skinner in 1978.
Like you go see Ron to pay homage. Like,
right.
It's a religious thing.
Like Freebird, and That Smell really moved me in 1980. Now I just I appreciate hearing the hits, but it's not motivating me as much as it used to.
Now when they sing "What's Your Name," they're really asking.
So good old Ron. Listen, we shouldn't say anything bad about Ron.
Oh, you talk about hate mail.
The Ronimals.
The Ronimal is a god. I'm just saying, don't go and do economic doom and gloom like infomercials for Stansberry Financial. I posted the article. It's a 51-minute interview about the imminent collapse of the establishment and this whole idea of a bail-in like happened in Cyprus, happening in world developed countries that have their own currency, their own central bank. It's never going to happen. And the only reason it'll ever happen is because the elites would never allow it.
Right.
They don't have to. They don't need to use citizens' deposits in order to have access to the world equity markets because they are the world equity markets. Mm-hmm. So you look like anyone that knows it or understands the game, you look like an idiot, and you're literally sacrificing your brand.
Right.
In order to make money.
I don't know. He's always kind of had, and that's the difference between Rand and Ron. Ron has always kind of had the granola, sort of the nerdy type libertarian. Rand has a much more. Ron has the me crowd. Okay, the dirty black T-shirt, the angry young white male,
the OG.
Right, the OG libertarian. Rand has a better chance of getting your kind, with the fresh off the reunion, off the golf course with your cigar.
You think this is a plan to make me more approachable? Make me approachable to Republicans that don't know what the hell they're talking about?
I know, you're a trap.
Totally. I've advocated being a Trojan horse my whole life.
All right, well, we need to wrap up. That's enough of this. I've had quite enough of you and of me and this podcast. This is like a 3-hour episode, I think, for God's sakes. I think that's it. I think we covered it, right?
Well, you never answered. How many licks does it take you to get to the center of a...
Shut up. All right, thank you for listening to this episode of We're Libertarians. Joe's mom taught me 3, so thank you for listening to this episode of We're Libertarians. We love you, especially you, Joe. All right. As always, we promise
to do better next time.